Special. I am Morgan Webb.
And I'm Adam Sessler. We're coming to you from the G4 Studios in Los Angeles. Today, you'll find out everything you need to know about Fallout 3 straight from Todd Howard and the team at Bethesda. We'll take you inside the game's apocalyptic future, see what's become of a bombed-out Washington, D.C., and bring you an exclusive look at Rivet City, a society thriving inside a wrecked aircraft carrier.
Plus, the game's creative team will explain how this RPG shooter works. They'll walk us through the role-playing elements that will keep you up all night trying to improve your agility. Then we'll educate you in the ways of Vats, the Vault-Tec-assisted targeting system, and show you how easy it is to blow your enemies to pieces.
And for you aspiring game developers, executive producer Todd Howard returns with more sage advice in Todd Time. Now, Fallout 3, first and foremost, is an open-world game. While that means you're less likely to run into invisible walls and a rigid story, it also means that you could get lost in meaningless tasks and sightseeing. We sat down with the crew at Bethesda to find out how they walked this tightrope. The developers at Bethesda are great at many things, especially creating living, breathing worlds for all to enjoy. The vast open universe of Fallout 3 is no exception. Developers went to great lengths to ensure that players would stay plugged in for the long haul.
So there's a main quest, and then do you have a lot of side quests?
Yeah, I mean, it's probably about 20 to 25 hours to complete the main quest if you really kind of stick to it. But there's probably 100 hours of gameplay in the game, so there's so much other stuff to do out in the world.
The world of Fallout 3 is a sprawling, post-apocalyptic landscape.
The big thing with our vision is it's DC. You know, it's DC 200 years after nuclear war, so it's, you know, what would that look like? What would it feel like?
As you can imagine, the game's universe is scattered with repurposed technology and communities built partially out of scrap heaps.
So you get Megaton, that's built out of a downed jetliner, and then Rivet City, which is really cool, which is the biggest city, which is built, you know, inside a beached aircraft carrier. The idea is, oh, you know, down by the naval yard, you have a beached aircraft carrier, and the humans would be like, let's go in there.
Overall, the world of Fallout 3 is way bigger than developers initially planned.
Okay, I think back to when the game was just a twinkle in everybody's eye, and then think about how the game looks right now. I mean, how is it different than it was originally imagined?
We always start like, okay, we're only just doing this big, because we always get ourselves like way in over our heads when we make our games with features and size. And so we try to design a game to be smaller this time, but then we kept like, oh, I have a cool idea, and making the world bigger. So we inflated the world where it ended up being about twice the size in the outside.
How do you keep people on track? You could run west and never get anything done.
The main thing is just to have a nice, clear log of objectives. You know, we've made that a lot clearer in this game, so it's very just simple. You need to talk to this person.
I have a feeling about it.
Or you need to get this piece of information, and then if we've already told you where that is, like it's in a specific town, you have to talk to this guy. And it's not really a mystery. You know, on the map is a dot.
With a painstakingly detailed world, players will feel very tempted to explore.
I'm really proud how, you know, we've managed to get all that together in a cohesive, you know, consistent experience that, you know, is a lot of fun. I've been playing the game myself for a while, and it just does not get old.
Sounds like we'll have to set aside plenty of time to explore the vast open world of Fallout 3.
As we've read in The Road, surviving the apocalypse is no easy task. Well, with all the mutant cannibals and, well, you know, Fallout.
So to help you carry the fire, here are the top 5 ways to survive in Fallout 3. Number 5 is get a hold of a fat man. No, we're not talking about William Conrad. This is the portable nuclear bomb gun that Sarah Palin wants to be able to hunt moose with.
Number 4 is consult your Pip-Boy 3000. It's like the iPhone of the apocalypse, but probably with better battery life. Number 3 is find a friend, preferably a robot. That way, when they start telling you about how cute their new dog is for the 1000th time, you can just turn them off.
Coming in at number 2 is watch out for radiation. Hey, if it can kill former Russian spies, then it can kill you too. And number 1 is get familiar with Vats. This system allows you to target specific body parts. But unlike Butters, you can't shoot people in the junk.
Most people know Bethesda as the developers of Oblivion and Fallout 3 and for creating open-world games with plenty of choice. Now, believe it or not, the company started off on a different path, even making games about John Connor's nemesis.
Fallout 3 is not the first Bethesda game to deal with a post-nuclear nightmare.
You got something you want to prove, boy?
In the early 90s, they worked on several PC games with the Terminator license. But Bethesda's pedigree as an open-world game developer had its humble beginnings in 1994 with the release of The Elder Scrolls Arena. What was kind of the turning point from sort of the older school games that you guys were working on?
Well, Arena actually started out as a gladiator combat game. It was just going to be sort of straight guys in arena fighting it out, and it kind of evolved from that to like, well, what if you could go around outside of the arena and go do stuff, and it sort of turned into this giant go anywhere you want and do anything you want game. So I think the real turning point for us was probably in 1999. Our company got acquired by ZeniMax Media, which is our parent company, and really brought us resources and the freedom to say, you guys can go do whatever, and what do you want to do? And so I think that was the point at which we branched out and brought Morrowind out in 2002.
Go ahead.
In Morrowind, the big development on that was actually the tools to make the game.
My patience is limited.
Was the thing that almost was the bigger breakthrough for us.
Make sure this information is correct.
So those tools are really what allow us as a team to put huge amounts of content into a world and be able to manage it without, going completely insane. And I think over the years we've gotten better at how do you make a huge game and still keep it manageable and still be able to define the experience for the player.
The experience gained working on Morrowind and its sequel Oblivion prepare Bethesda for the Fallout 3 project. What do you think is sort of the overall philosophy of how you guys approach these games?
I mean, the big thing for us, and the reason we wanted to go get Fallout in the first place, is at its core, it was still about, go do whatever you want and be whatever kind of person you want. So how they go about doing it and what kinds of experiences you have can be very different.
Excellent. Excellent.
At its core, that's what we like to do. We like to just go crazy with, can I do that? Yeah, sure. Whatever you see, whatever you want to go do, it's up to you.
Coming up on X-Play's Fallout 3 special. Get ready for Todd Time. One of gaming's biggest names will tell you what's the recipe for success. Then the crew at Bethesda explains what it takes to make an RPG shooter and how to turn your character into an unstoppable killing machine. Plus, we explore the decimated future of Washington, D.C. and see how it was all created. You'll learn the ins and outs of Vats and see how easy it is to take down your foes with the push of a button. All that and more right after this.
Welcome back to X-Play's Fallout 3 special. Todd Howard is Fallout 3's director, which I think means he takes credit for everyone's work and sleeps with models. At least that's what our director does. Whether or not that's true, Todd does know a thing or two about games.
What time is it? Game design time. What time is it? Never a late time. What time is it? Say his name time. It's Todd time. Todd time.
There are 3 rules that we develop our games by here at Bethesda Game Studios. Number 1, great games are played, not made. If you really try to follow a strict design on paper, your game may not end up the way you want. So we try to get everything we can in the game, play with it, change it, make it better. Number 2, keep it simple.
Our games are really, really big. They can get complicated sometimes.
We keep the rules for the player as simple as possible. They can understand it, and then all of that content can come together. Number 3, most important, define the experience. Try not to define your game by a list of features the game is going to have, but the experience the player is going to have. So this lets us weed out features that don't add to that experience and put in features and spend a lot of our development time on the features that really make that experience.
Intricate leveling systems are great for RPGs with swords and magic and silly quests, but they don't necessarily work with games that have first-person shooting. Somehow Fallout 3 seems to make it work, and here's how they do it.
Bethesda is known for making some of the deepest and longest-lasting role-playing experiences in the industry, but Fallout 3 has this award-winning developer taking a shot at creating a different type of RPG than they're used to.
One of the big things that Emma and Todd talked about from the very beginning was coming up, first of all, how are we going to do role-playing with guns? Because it's not the easiest thing in the world to do.
So one of the fascinating things that you've been able to do with this game is make a game that can be an RPG or it can be a shooter. How did you reconcile those two genres?
It was tough. We walked that line in our previous stuff between how actiony do we make it, how much we rely on your stats. We knew going into this that we were going to do some, first-person shooting, and then we wanted to do something more with role-playing and guns. You have the 7 main special stats: strength, perception, endurance, charisma, intelligence, agility, luck. And then you also have 13 skills, which cover more the minute-to-minute actions you do in the game, like specific guns and lockpicking and sneaking. When you level your character up, obviously you get to pick what you want to be good at, and then you're not going to be good at the other things.
In what other ways can you level up your character?
So you obviously get experience points for killing people. Every time you discover a location in the world, you get experience points for finishing quests, doing things like successfully picking a lock or hacking a computer. And then once you level up, you get to spend those skill points. And so everything has a cause and effect. The more points you put into melee or energy weapons, the more damage you're going to be able to do, the more accurate you're going to be with those weapons. You continue to put all your points into lockpicking, but not combat, so you're not getting better at killing people, but you're able to break into places where you're getting really stupid powerful stuff, so that even though you're not as good at using them, they're so powerful that you're better at combat because you're getting access to resources you wouldn't have had otherwise. You also get to pick a perk, which is a really powerful way of further defining what kind of character do I want to play. You can use those to increase skills that you already have or give yourself new abilities. So for example, if you're playing as a female character, you can pick the Black Widow perk. And what that allows you to do is you do more damage towards men in combat, and every now and then when you're talking to certain guys, you get a special dialogue option that you wouldn't otherwise get.
What's a detail in the game that maybe the average gamer isn't going to notice, but you guys put a lot of work into or you're really proud of?
I'm really proud of how the leveling works, because we've been through it so many different ways in all the Elder Scrolls stuff. I mean, we try to balance it, so that if you're going to go one way or the other, everything is as balanced as possible, and no skill really trumps another. But it comes across in the game really well. I think that's really hard to get right. We'll see what everybody thinks, but we're feeling really good about how that came out.
When X-Play's Fallout 3 Special returns, we show you how to blow stuff up good with Vats, as well as dive into the game's wholesome end-of-the-world style. Stay with us. Welcome back to X-Play's Fallout 3 Special. This apocalyptic shooter marries Bethesda's style of open-world games and the 1950s retro happiness established by the original games. But like any marriage, it takes a little work and some Maryland mutant blue crabs.
Fallout 3 may have a retro vibe, but its art and technology are definitely cutting edge. For game makers, going from the fantasy world of Oblivion to the post-apocalyptic universe of Fallout was a unique transition.
What did you want to take from some of the previous games?
We absolutely had to have sort of the staple Fallout, retro 1950s futuristic vibe. That's something very unique to the franchise, and basically sort of informs basically the whole world in terms of how it looks and how it feels.
When you said, okay, we're going to do Fallout, we're going to do post-apocalyptic, what were kind of those aesthetic rules that you laid out?
It's 1950s, it's an alternate universe, so you don't just sort of walk down to DC and look at all the buildings and go, okay, we're just going to have all of this but destroy it. It's like, well, what would have been in this world and what wouldn't, and how do we bring out that sort of 50s influence, the Googie architecture, things where, you know, it's cool and futuristic, but it's really kind of clunky and retro at the same time.
To get the look of Fallout 3 just right, artists had to balance a Mad Max aesthetic with anachronistic charm.
You know, it is a balance to not only figure out what would have been in the world that got destroyed and what would DC have looked like as this timeline progressed before the war, and then looking at, you know, what would the world look like, how would the creatures have mutated. You know, the Mirelurks, for example, are riff on what would giant Maryland mutated blue crabs look like.
What is sort of your vision of what the world of Fallout is?
It's post-apocalyptic, but it's not your sort of standard road warrior post-apocalyptic. You have to understand the world, and the world was sort of like a, you know, Disney-esque world of tomorrow. That's what got nuked. So it's a little bit road warrior, but it's also a little bit, you know, like Leave It to Beaver.
We actually, oddly enough, we found the more we destroyed it, the cooler it looked. You know, if we could show a hint of something that existed before, and then if there's a giant rubble.
In order to keep the game's look fresh, developers set it in a completely different location.
Usually you think of sort of out west, California desert, Mad Max kind of environment, and that's when you think of a barren wasteland. That's where it starts. And we actually, you know, moved the location of this game someplace new, to the East Coast. It's got a different feel to it.
In terms of technology, the developers at Bethesda have valuable experience under their belt. Oblivion was an astoundingly complex game that appeared on several platforms.
What is the tech that we're looking at there? So you have this amazing draw distance, and it has this amazing detail right up in front of you.
In Fallout, we are basically taking the Oblivion tech and then building on top of it and taking all of those learnings to figure out, you know, here's how we blend textures to make things load in better and to draw further out and have the frame rate be, you know, what's probably twice as much stuff on the screen running at a faster frame rate than it was in Oblivion, simply because, you know, we've been working on these platforms now for years, and the freedom that the game allows you is being able to convey that visually.
It looks like designers have good reason to be pleased with the results.
In a bombed-out, decimated Washington, D.C., most of your weapons are handmade, cobbled together from, well, whatever you can find. Railroad spikes, rocks, teddy bears, made extra deadly thanks to Vats. Here's a closer look at Fallout 3's Instruments of Death.
You can't talk about Fallout 3's combat and not start the conversation with the Vault-Tec assisted targeting system. Vats allows the player to slow down time, choose a target, and achieve some very bloody results.
Now let's talk about that combat, because that's another huge difference. That's not just the guns from what you're used to in Oblivion or any of the Elder Scrolls games, but it's the Vats system that you have added in a kind of turn-based element into what is functionally a real-time shooter.
In real time, trying to target somebody's arms can be pretty difficult. They're moving around, you're trying to get your crosshairs on it. Vats allows you to pause all of that, cue it up, and then it plays it back in this really fun cinematic mode that lets the actions play out in kind of a cool way. So you can go into Vats at any time, but you can only perform actions when you've got enough action points. So you use it up in Vats, and then you have a period of time in real time where you have to wait so they can come back. So you're sort of balancing how much do I want to do in real time, how much do I want to do in Vats.
And the other thing is the combat gets pretty heavy on you sometimes, and we didn't want someone who's just good at like a Call of Duty or a Halo to enjoy the game. And the Vats targeting system kind of hopefully breaks that down and makes someone who's not good at that stuff, makes their character on the screen, you know, a complete badass.
Okay, let's talk about some of the weapons in the game. What are some of the variety you're going to see?
You know, we still have all of the different types from the original game, so we have a nice mix of, you know, small guns, things like pistols, big guns, things like the Fat Man and the rocket launcher, energy weapons, melee weapons, unarmed weapons, which doesn't sound exactly right, but you do have unarmed weapons that you can use.
Unarmed weapon?
Or you get things like the power fist, and just punching people in the head and using your power fist to punch their heads off.
What are some of the more interesting ones that you have in the game?
The rocket launcher, which I know you like. There are only certain things you can put in it. The damage is based on, you know, the weight and velocity of the thing. So teddy bear is actually hard to kill somebody with. The railway rifle, that's the one you can build that shoots rail spikes. It's got the good train whistle sound when you shoot it. And it pins limbs to things when you get criticals.
Now, I think it brings us to something that we've noted many times. It is a very violent game.
Yes, we just were like, we need to, like, you know, ludicrous speed on the violence. You know, violence done well can be really, really funny, but we try to make it over the top so that you're kind of in on the joke. You know, when a guy's head blows up, his eyeballs are a bit too big and his optic nerve's a bit too long. It's just a ton of fun.
Tons of bloody good fun. I can't wait to start splattering everywhere.
Kaboom! Well, that about does it. Thank you to everyone at Bethesda for taking us inside this amazingly gory world.
And rather destroyed world as well. Gory and destroyed. All right, up next, we got more X-Play. You must have maxed out your luck stats.